Episode 142, Blended Families. Welcome back to One Extraordinary Marriage, where we talk sex, love, and commitment. You're here with Elisa DiLorenzo.
And Tony DiLorenzo.
And just, wow, it's November. This year has flown by. And as we head into the holiday season, first and foremost, just want you guys to make time over the next 2 months to keep intimacy a priority in your marriage.
Yeah.
This can be a really stressful time for couples for many, many reasons. Finances, family relationships, overcommitments, things like that. And it's very easy to let your marriage fall low down on the totem pole. And I'm just going to encourage you, all of you, as you're listening to this, to make sure you're building in time to your weeks to spend time with your husband or wife, to really connect on what's going on so that you don't find yourselves overwhelmed and distanced.
Right.
And we speak from experience, because if you've listened to any of the podcasts that have fallen in November, December for the last 2-3 years, both of our children have their birthdays between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So I am in my we've already started the birthday party planning for both kids. And so we're in this period of time, and I know that I'm not the only person out there that gets a little crazed between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And so just take advantage of those opportunities when you can steal a moment with your spouse where, even if you're sitting on the couch holding hands, sipping hot chocolate, or, curled up on that bearskin rug that Tony talks about every once in a while, make the time, because it's very easy to get lost in the next 2 months.
Yeah, really do. And, for us, we've already started taking advantage of it. Friday night, fortunately for us, both of our kids ended up going and doing a sleepover at friend's house. So Elise and I were blessed and so thankful to just get away. We did a fun little date night that Elisa had gotten like an Amazon deal for a restaurant that we'd been wanting to try out. So, we got to get away and make some time for each other. So if you have kids that are of that age where they can do some sleepovers, encourage them. It's okay. Elise and I look for these times, and we sit down and we try to plan out our schedules, because we know it's going to be busy. We have Thanksgiving here every year, and that can range. I mean, it could be as few as 8 of us, but it's been as many as I think 16 or so. Yeah. So it can get fairly large as well. I think this year is going to be smaller, but it's still, we have things here. We enjoy ourselves because we plan ahead and we go, you know what? Let's find some time. In years past, when it comes to Thanksgiving, my brother and sister-in-law would take the kids back up to LA with them after Thanksgiving. And then Elise and I would just drive up there on Sunday morning and pick them up and then bring them down. It hasn't happened over the last couple of years. Maybe we'll try to make it happen this year. Send my brother a text.
It's like, are we doing a little hint, hoping they're listening to the podcast here? Or are you just, hoping that all our fans are going to send, good vibes to Paul and Melissa?
Yeah. So, make that happen. It's really important, because the worst thing you can do, and having talked to you guys for a number of years now, is the worst thing you can do is just go, when the next year starts, when 2013 starts, we're gonna get everything on track. You know what? It's time to get on track? It's time to get on track now. Not in 2013, not in the middle of 2013 or 2014. Time to get on track is right now. So figure it out, because there's no better time than now. Because 2 months is going to pass, things are going to happen, and then before you know it, it just gets on rolling again. Yep. So make time now. I want to touch on what we talked about last week. Was last week scheduling sex, or was that 2 weeks ago?
It was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. So when we talked about scheduling sex and our intimacy lifestyle, which we have been doing for 3 years now, and if you haven't caught that episode, go on back and listen to it. Here's something I want to bring up, because it's happening, and it's happened a number of times in our relationship, and I had to bring it up to Elisa this weekend because it sort of frustrated me. And so if this is happening in your marriage, again, gonna have that talk. What ends up happening is Elisa's nights are Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And what will end up happening a lot of times is that she's waiting till Friday to initiate. Well, for example, this weekend, this Friday, we were out. We watched a movie. The movie got done about like 10:30ish, and we end up going, kids aren't here, so we got the house to ourselves. We end up going to bed, and I'm thinking to myself going, okay, Elise, time for you to initiate here. I'm not initiating. This is your night to initiate. And before you know it, she's conked out. I'm conked out. And that's the falling asleep part that we fell asleep. We were tired. The problem is that I was expecting her to initiate. And with her not telling me that she was tired, it sort of irked me. And then come the following morning, I'm sitting there going, okay, well, I'd like to go for a ride, but is she going to initiate now because she didn't initiate last night? And so I brought this up to her going, hey, you know what? If you're tired, let me know and just say, hey, we're going to move it to Saturday. Because if there's one thing that just sort of, and I've told her this, is that it just irks me, is that you don't say anything. And you just sort of leave me hanging.
I like how he just tosses me back the mic like, okay, go. Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things, and there's no excuse for it. There was no excuse for not talking about it, besides the fact that we both kind of laid down in bed and, started, snoring away. But, Tony brings up a good point. A simple couple of lines saying, you know what, I'm just exhausted. I'd been up since about 4:30 that morning, which is very out of character for us. I was doing an all-day event. And so I was tired, but I didn't communicate that with him. And that's, we talk about communication so much, and on both sides of the marriage, a simple sentence or two will soothe away a world of hurts instead of letting things fester.
Right.
And that's really where Tony was coming from when we were talking about this on Saturday. He's like, you could have just told me you were tired. It would have been easier to hear, you know what, I'm tired. You're tired. No, I'm tired. We'll do it tomorrow, than to fall asleep going, well, you know what? You just stood me up.
Right.
So that is the message to be gained from that. And talking about scheduling sex, want to share what some of our longtime listeners have done to celebrate the end of daylight savings time. And
you guys are so creative. It's just awesome.
I mean, things we just don't think about. But so these longtime listeners write in and they say, thanks to you, we've been trying to incorporate fun into the bedroom. We got the idea that due to daylight savings time, that this would be the one day of the year that we could have sex twice in the same day at the exact same time. So last night we set the alarm to get up at 1:30 a.m., had sex, and set it again to wake up about 45 minutes later to have sex again, starting at 1:30 a.m. I, the wife, am not so much the adventurous type when it comes to the bedroom, but with my husband's desire to change things and your encouragement each week to spice it up in the bedroom, this was something that I thought I could have fun doing, and I did. Thanks so much for your podcast. Keep up the good work, and God bless you guys.
That's just so fantastic. Way to go, you guys. Way to
I'm a little bummed that we didn't think of this.
Way outside the box.
Because I was like, wow. You know, 1:30, and I love the fact that they picked a random obscure time in the middle of the night.
Hence, Elise and I wouldn't be able to wake up because of what we just talked about. Elisa would not roll over at 1:30.
Every once in a while, I get the urge in the middle of the night. It does not happen very often. This would have to be very, very planned out.
Yes.
But creative, and I love it. And
totally.
It's just like when you guys decide to do your own round the clock sex challenges where it's like 12 and 12, you do fun things like that. I really do appreciate that you guys write in and share that with not just us, but allow us to share it with the one community, because it is a lot of fun to throw it out there and say, hey guys, you know what, in 4 months we've got the whole time change again, so you can do it twice.
Exactly.
So all of those of you that missed it this time, start planning.
That's right. And all of you know from this point forward, we will be reading your emails, your messages from Facebook, your calls, all anonymously. Mm-hmm. I think this is a big thing that we've discovered. You guys have so much to say, and we understand you don't want it to be broadcast around the world, who you are or where you live. We get it, but we want to hear from you. So from this point forward, when you email us, you can do that at ask@oneextraordinarymarriage.com. oneextraordinarymarriage.com.
Doesn't it ask our name?
Nope. Ask.
You changed it?
You can just be ask.
Okay.
At oneextraordinarymarriage.com. You can call us 858-876-5663. If you do decide to go through Facebook, you can message us right there when you're on your desktop. And if you're on your app, there's actually a way that you can just hit call, and that will go directly to our voicemail. And so there's a number of ways that you guys can reach out, share what's going on, but most importantly, know that it's anonymous. Mm-hmm. And then this way, we can just share where we're at, and we can tell you truthfully and honestly what we think. And then that way, there's no, putting it out there and your name's there and it's running around. Mm-hmm. All right, because we know there's a world of hurt going on. There's a world of good stuff going on too.
Well, and look at this couple.
Yeah, and you sometimes you just don't want that out there, and
right.
That's totally understandable. And with that, let's jump into this week's topic. It's one that you guys have been asking us to dive into. And just like when we talked about infertility, it's not something that we have dealt with personally, but having been around long enough, I think we understand, especially with many of our friends that we have and continue to meet, there's a lot of blended families out there. Mm-hmm. There really are. The statistics bear that this is happening more and more. 50% of first marriages are ending in divorce. 67% of second marriages are ending in divorce, and 73% of third marriages are ending in divorce. So when you start doing those numbers, you start figuring out there's probably a lot of you guys out there who are blended families. Mm-hmm. And you guys face challenges that a first marriage doesn't.
Right.
Elisa and I, first marriage, we have our kids, and that's it. Mm-hmm. When I think about you guys who are blended, you have a lot going on because you have to protect your house. This is our house, you and your spouse. If you have kids from your ex, now you're dealing with that component. Mm-hmm. You're possibly even dealing with the ex-in-laws component. And if your spouse also has kids, that's going on that side as well. So where do you start? Where do you go? What do you do? And Elise and I would say, first and foremost, if you are thinking about getting married into a blended family, you're going to blend your families together, you got to ask some tough questions. I think you got to really dive into some big time questions and answer these questions honestly and openly, right? And if you're already married, you may need to start answering some of these questions now.
And I do have to say, just as an aside on the whole questions thing, we asking questions is such a vital relationship tool. We were in our small group last night and was talking with one of the couples in the group who have been married 3 years. They'd both been married previously. And when they were in that dating, early engaged phase where they were making sure everything's going forward, they had this long road trip. And the wife she'd been traveling previously without her fiance, hadn't put this list of questions together. Mm-hmm. And so as a captive audience in the car, while she's driving, she hands him the notebook and basically says, we're going to go through these questions. And they did over, I think it was like a 12-hour, 16-hour road trip. I don't know.
Yeah, it was some long road trip. It was hilarious.
But what happened is here are two people who have been previously married hashing through the things that didn't go right the first time. Mm-hmm. And that's why we're bringing up these questions, because there's a lot of stuff that you've got to work through that, quite honestly, those of you that aren't blended could probably stand to go through some of these questions as well.
Yeah, and if you want to grab our 77 questions to get the conversation started, because you're sitting there going, well, what questions do I ask? Where should I even start? Just go to oneextraordinarymarriage.com/newsletter. That'll get you on our free newsletter, and you'll get that plus some other goodies as well.
Whether you're a blended family or a first marriage, there are some things that are going to be universal. And the very first one goes to what we discussed in the very first chapter of Strip Down. Got to have your priorities in order. And it goes God, spouse, kids, work, and the rest of your life. And the reason we say this is because we know a number of marriages that the first time around didn't work out because that order was inverted or upside down or jumbled or whatever you want to call it. It was out of sequence.
Right. You know, the kids came above the spouse. Work came above the spouse. You know, the other activities came above the spouse. And the spouse got fed up.
Sure.
The spouse decided to leave, you know, because the spouse wasn't up on the list. And so when you're looking at yourself and you're going, well, we're in this blended family, you got to protect your house.
And when we say your house, we're talking about your marriage.
Yeah. You know, you and your spouse, you got to protect it. You need to put those boundaries around it. And I think when I say these questions that you have to be talking about, a lot of them are going to deal with kids.
Sure.
Because, man, some of you have kids that are there full time. You know, they're your kids and they're there full time. And your spouse's kids come in half the time. How are you raising them? How are you treating them? You know, these are issues that are going to be different for each and every one of you. You know, this isn't going to be the same for each family across the board. But you guys have to come to some consensus and an agreement between the two of you. Because the thing that's going to happen, and I know it even with my kids, man, are they really good at flipping things around between parents? Because Alex can be, he's a great kid, but he can ask Elisa one thing here in the kitchen, and I'm outside, and Elisa will say no. She'll be like, nope, not doing it. He'll just sort of stroll on outside and go, hey, Dad, ask the question. I'm like, sure, sounds good. I walk in, you know, and I'm walking in with him, and Alex is like, well, Dad said sure, Mom. And all of a sudden, Elisa's looking at me going, well, I said no. Oh, okay, hold on, time out. I mean, this is our parenting, the way we work on it. I basically go, time out. You asked your mom first, right? Well, yeah. And she said no. Yeah? Okay. That's what sticks. I am willing to forego. I don't care if I think it's great or not. I basically succumb to going, you asked your mother first. That's the answer you got. That's the answer we stick with. And so that may be something that you guys need to deal with in yours.
Right. Asking how, you know, for a lot of blended families, if you've got, you know, his, hers, ours, which is a really funny movie. If you have not seen it, there is a
yours, mine, and ours. And Elisa and I found this. It's on Netflix. So if you have Netflix, just look up yours, mine, and ours. And it's a widowed Coast Guard admiral and a widowed handbag designer fall in love and marry, much to the dismay of her 10 and his 8 children. So they bring together 18 kids.
And they're about as different as night and day. And
oh my gosh.
It's a funny movie, but there are a lot of really important lessons in this movie. And one of them is, you know, with the kids, you've got to have some kind of consensus. You've got to figure out before you bring everybody together, you know, in terms of discipline, how you're going to be on the same page. Because those kids that are, you know, splitting time between you and another parent, obviously are going to have a whole nother set of rules with that other parent. And, you know, these are conversations that you have to have, because whether it's a blended family or a first-time marriage, kids are good at the whole manipulation thing.
Mm-hmm.
They are. They figure it out. They know which parent to talk to. And when there's a third adult or possibly even a fourth adult in their equation with step-parents, they're going to figure out the path of least resistance. They're also going to figure out how to drive a wedge between the two of you, because in most cases, they're not going to be thrilled that there's another parent around. There's just a very real threat to their sense of self, to their dreams of their parents getting back together, no matter what the situation was. And so there's hostility. Many of you have shared this with us, that as you bring people together, it doesn't always go as smoothly as you would like.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting on the same page with the kids, making decisions about where the kids are going to fall in your list of priorities.
Right. Again, we started this top from the top of the show here, God, your spouse, your kids. And so if you've come into this marriage and your kids are above your spouse now, believe me, there are going to be issues. There will be, because your spouse is going to feel left out.
And in all honesty, that may have been what happened the first time around.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point in time, you have to decide that you're going to model a healthy relationship for your children. One that endures, one where they understand that parents come first,
mm-hmm.
and that this is how we do things. Our kids know. Our kids joke about us going out on date night. They'll even try and send us out the door. Don't you guys need a date night?
Mm-hmm.
But that's because they know that we place an extreme amount of value on that time together.
Yeah. And
you have to do that as well. Just because you've brought, people together, and we now have step parents in here, and we've got you've got, many more people to deal with, you still have to create the time for yourself. So you have to ask yourself, when are we going to make time for just the two of us? Especially if you're balancing kids with exes, who goes here, where, and maybe your calendar is a little more, lines and squiggles and arrows here and there and everywhere, but you still have to look at the calendar and say, well, when do the two of us, when do the grown-ups have time? And that has to be regular, because with a blended family, the dynamics of kids and exes, you're going to need an even stronger foundation to be able to handle all of that extra movement and noise in your life.
And then I think another thing we need to talk about is that sexual relationship that happens between you and your new spouse. Because what may have happened in your past marriage, there may have been, there could have been sexual infidelity in there. There could have been a lot of stuff that happened, good or bad, that needs to be talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of what ends up happening will bring those pasts into our new marriage. And that is not fair to your spouse.
The reality is it makes you who you are.
Yes.
But you can't hold over the bad stuff and, keep measuring your current spouse against the bad yardstick.
Mm-hmm.
Or projecting those feelings, those expectations, those disappointments onto a new person.
Right.
And you also can't compare your new spouse with all the good things to an old spouse. Nobody wants to be compared. If you chose that person, don't compare them to what came before them. You've made a choice. So, nobody wants to hear, well, this isn't as good as so-and-so, or, well, she did it better, or she did this differently. Yeah, probably did. But guess what? That's past. We're living in the present.
Yeah. And one of the toughest things, and I can only share from my experiences of pornography and how those images and, if I was watching videos, the sounds and everything infiltrated my mind. And I do believe that God has wiped all of that out. I truly believe that most of that stuff, all of it in my bedroom for sure, never comes into my mind anymore. I mean, it's been 8 years, and there is not once that I'm sitting there lying in bed looking at Elisa, making love to Elisa, thinking about somebody else. I truly believe in that power that God has over us, over our minds, to wipe clean and give us that new slate. And so if you're struggling in your marriage now and having thoughts of a past, an ex, I truly believe you need to give that up to God. If you're in the bedroom and these images, these thoughts are coming back, and they may, like Elisa said, they may be good or bad. I don't know what they are, but I will tell you, those images and those thoughts will destroy you, and they'll destroy your marriage because you keep playing them over and over. And believe me, God doesn't want you to. I mean, you've been wiped clean. Give it up. I know it's hard. I know it can be difficult. I've been there. I know what it's like. I truly do know what it's like. But when I gave it all up, when I finally just said, enough's enough, God, clean me, take it away from me, that's when things happened. I had to make that choice, though. If I started feeling like images were coming back, I would just lie right back into going, the most beautiful person on this earth is my wife. The most beautiful person. I will measure all beauty against her. And that's what I would do. And maybe that's what you need to do, if that is a struggle you're having. Because I'm sure, and I've heard it, that this comes up and can cause havoc, it can wreak havoc in your marriage.
You know, another area too where you need to have some really detailed conversations is on your finances.
Oh, yeah.
Because again, you kind of got the his, the hers, and ours, and
alimony, child support,
yeah,
lack thereof,
and all of these things. I mean, we've seen it all with our friends, in terms of, kids not receiving their child support, and how does that impact the family? Back and forth with custodial arrangements. And all of this, everything costs money. And so you've got to be very, very upfront, very communicative on what's going to happen with finances to the best of your ability, knowing that it's completely fluid. But even if children aren't involved, or you both don't have children, because sometimes it's only on one side, there are still those conversations that have to happen because of finances. Mm-hmm. Because if only one of you has children, then there's sort of that, well, why are we spending all this money on the kids? That type of thing. And not, before I had kids, I had no idea how much they cost. And so, if you're remarrying and you're marrying someone that doesn't have children, there's going to be a learning curve there as to what children cost. Yep. And so prepare for that. Know in advance that some of these things are going to be challenges. And when you're moving into a blended family, if you are a blended family, you kind of have to look at each day as a new adventure. I mean, we do that in our marriage, and there's
all marriages.
There's no blending, but you have to understand that life is going to throw you different curveballs because you've got all of these external forces. Yeah. And the most successful blended families I've seen are those that say, you know what, this is just going to require another conversation. Like, we need to, back to the drawing board. Thought we had this nailed down, but, an ex popped up or did something, or, the kids are doing something, and how do we negotiate this with them, with us, however. But the couples that have the most success are the ones that are making time to talk to each other. Because just like in, first marriages, sometimes things come completely out of the blue.
Right.
And you've got to sit down and you've got to start asking the questions all over again. And the questions on the 77 questions to get the conversation started, those are the same ones that you should be asking each other, whether you're blended, intact, whatever you are. And the reality is that just like that couple that shared with us there are questions prior to getting married. If you're thinking, maybe some of you listening are thinking of marrying someone who's been divorced before. Maybe you've been divorced before and you're thinking about getting remarried. You know what? Sit down and write out those questions.
Oh, most definitely.
Think about those areas in your marriage, your first marriage that worked, and talk about those areas, because you want to make sure that whoever you're marrying is on the same page with you. Think about those areas of your marriage that didn't work. Finances, family. I mean, one of the questions this couple brought up was, they started negotiating Christmas prior to ever getting married. What are your expectations for Christmas? Here, there, where, family vacations, spending time with nieces and nephews, whatever it is. Going to church, pulling our money, taking the car to the repair shop, whatever it was. If it worked or didn't work the first time, talk about it. Because a lot of times what happens is we hold all that stuff inside and we're like, oh, well, we'll talk about it when it comes up. When we cross, it's that whole, we'll cross, or
when we cross that bridge.
Thank you. When we cross that bridge. And the reality is that sometimes we get to that bridge and we still don't want to talk about it. So we turn around and go the other way, hoping there's another smaller bridge so we don't have to talk about those issues. And the thing is, it doesn't go away, folks. And if you don't talk about it, the bridge gets bigger and it goes across a wider expanse, and there's a greater gap that you're trying to cross, because you have to talk about these things. You have to look at if you're engaged, you have to look at that person and say, we need to talk about this stuff. If you've already blended your families, you say, this part of our lives isn't working. So we need to sit down and we need to figure out how we get our priorities straight.
And I think a big thing is too, especially if kids are involved and there is contact with exes, I would presume that this is a big area that needs to be discussed. Mm-hmm. Because just like we've talked about before with emotional affairs or even physical affairs, you have to know where that line is in the sand that you're willing to go up to and go, you know what? I need to take about 3 steps back from that line because I don't even want to cross that line, especially with an ex. And so, there may be some things that you need to set up within your new family, within your new marriage, that you just go, hey, if you're going to go see the spouse, then I'm there, or something that, so mm-hmm. that there isn't going to be this, oh, hey, and then it, drinks or meals or whatever. Because I would sense that, I know personally I would be a bit jealous. There'd always be something going on in the back of my mind going, okay, what is she doing? It seems like it's been a little longer than it should be. She should have been home by now. And if we don't have some of that stuff already set up and I think that would drive me mad and drive me crazy, which would lead to arguments at home, mm-hmm. which would lead to a decrease in sexual satisfaction.
Sure.
Which, it would lead to all those things that just start coming up again. And so, do you have to have contact with your ex? If not, then it's time to cut the cord. Mm-hmm. They're on Facebook or Twitter, or you have them on your phone still. Time to delete them, unfriend them, get rid of them. Done. You've yoked yourself to another person. And so that person is the most important person in your life. Mm-hmm. Again, after God. So if you can cut them out, cut them out. If you can't, then I think you need to have some sort of understanding or guidelines that you guys both follow. Mm-hmm. It has to be discussed, has to be worked out. And the more and more we talk about communication, which is so vitally important, we need to start stripping away the emotional side of stuff. Not always, but we need to start stripping away the emotional side of our conversations. And we just need to talk practically and just go, this is what it is. This is what we need to do. We need to move on. And we don't need to be emotionally high and going up and down all over the place. Elise and I, there are times when we are emotionally charged. We know it. We will address it. There are times, though, when our conversations are very businesslike. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. We love each other. We love each other dearly. You know, love is not a noun to us. It's not an emotional. It is a verb. It's something that we do each and every day. So for us, there are times in our conversations when we strip away the emotion. It strictly is this is what needs to be done. No hurt feelings. Move on. And that's it. And so think about that, because a lot of communication is emotionally charged. And we need to sort of set that aside a little bit, temper it, and just go, okay, I got it. And
it's okay to have business-like discussions about your marriage. It's okay to handle certain aspects from a very practical sense. You know, because the reality is that sometimes we hide behind our emotions. We use them as smoke screens for what we really need to address in our marriages. And, you know, if you're a blended family, you've already been through a lot of emotion. That's how the first marriage ended. One way or another, there was a lot of emotion in there, whatever the circumstances were. And, you know, a lot of you have a lot of hurts, and you've been through a lot of trauma and emotional pain and possibly abuse and things like that. And so you need to be able to get yourself to a point. I mean, if you're trusting somebody else to come into your life, you know, you need to be able to strip away all of those masks, all of that baggage. You've got to be able to give it to them and have it be accepted. You know, because you're coming into the marriage with baggage. I mean, we all do. Just, you know, some of us have bigger suitcases than others. Some of you are carry-on, some of you are, you know, cargo ship. And trust me, I fall somewhere in the cargo carrier. But the reality is we all have it. And we have to be able to give it in a safe way to our spouses. And so as you're negotiating your blended families, you have to be able to say, you know what, I need to talk to you. And you know, state of the marriage, you know, in a few days, we just need to talk about what's going on, you know, like how we're blending the kids and how we're disciplining, because it seems like your kids are getting away with other stuff, whatever it is. Or we need to talk about money because, you know, there's some stuff coming up with custodial things and it's going to impact our finances. Or I feel like the kids are monopolizing all of our time because we're trying to make sure that everybody's needs are met and we're not meeting our own needs.
That's huge.
These are all state of the marriage talks that if you plan them and you give a little advance notice that this is what we're going to talk about, you can actually have those calmer conversations. It doesn't have to be when he walks in the door and, you know, he's been literally 1 foot inside the door, not even all the way in, and you're barraging him with this, that, and the other. And he's like, I just walked in. What the heck just happened? I'm going to walk back out again and try this one more time. We do that. We shell shock people. You know, you get the credit card bill and you're like, what do you mean you spent all this money? Blah, 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 blah. And it does not matter how you got into your marriage. A state of the marriage conversation on any topic that is an issue in your marriage will only serve to better your marriage.
And if you want to learn more about the state of your marriage talks, it is something that Elise and I really have believed in for years. These talks redefined our marriage 5 years ago and subsequent years. And to this point that, you know what, we still have them. They're not as frequent, but we have them. And if you want to learn more about it, you can go to oneextraordinarymarriage.com/he zigs, she zags, all one. And that is our he zigs, she zags, getting your communication on the same path audio program. That is a 2-hour live event that Elise and I did here. and we recorded that for you. And so included in that are, again, the 77 questions, and you also get the program for that, the program worksheet for that. And it's only $20. So pick it up. You're going to learn about the state of your marriage and much more.
Mm-hmm. And it's, guys, I mean, we want you, whether it's your first marriage, your second marriage, your third marriage, we want it to be extraordinary for you.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't want you to continue to be another statistic. Those numbers that Tony read at the beginning of this episode where, 50% of first marriages, 60-some% of second marriages, and 75 or 74%, 73% of third marriages fail. You guys have the power to change those numbers.
Mm-hmm.
You have the power to be on the positive side of that statistic, but you have to make a decision. You have to make a decision that the marriage that you're in is the last marriage you're getting into. It's not 1 foot out the door. It's all in.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's going to be all in, then you are going to make a decision daily, sometimes hourly, and quite honestly, sometimes minute by minute, that you are going to make this work. It's not always going to be easy. And in fact, some days you're going to wake up going, why did I think this was such a great idea? I mean, Tony and I have been married 16 years, and every once in a while we have one of those days where I'm like, this was a good idea. Like, what was I thinking? And it's usually just over a minor thing that, gets blown out of proportion. But, that's the reality of spending so much time with another human being who's as imperfect as you are. What you can do is you can decide, what, this is it. This is it. This is my marriage. This is my present. I'm going to work on this. I am going to put forth the effort into making this work. I am going to demonstrate my priorities on a daily basis. I'm going to admit when I make mistakes. I am going to take off my masks. I am going to do all of these things because this is the marriage I am fighting for. And I think we've gotten so complacent in our lives that we just kind of, let everything else take over, and we have stopped fighting for the marriage that we are in. And so if you've got all these external forces pulling on you because you are a blended family, I'm going to challenge you this week to put those walls of protection around your marriage.
Yeah.
To say, what, this is it. We are, circling the wagons. I don't care what analogy you want to use, but you're going to look at your spouse and say, what, this is it. We are going to be rock solid. We are going to demonstrate our priorities. We are going to put things from the top down. God, spouse, kids, work, family, or God, spouse, kids, work, life. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to demonstrate to these kids what a solid marriage looks like. We are going to demonstrate to our friends that, what, you can be a blended family and you can make this work. And yes, it's a lot of effort, but what, every day makes it worthwhile. You have that choice, but you've got to be all in.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to decide daily. Just like for those of us that are on our first marriages, we decide daily to stay engaged in our marriages.
And more than anything, I think we got to start looking at ourselves and let's start acting extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Let's get crazy. Let's get extravagant. Let's stop being like everybody else. I don't want to hear I'm busy. I don't care. You know what I want to hear? I want to hear that you took a nap on Saturday. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear that you just wiped your slate clean and said, you know what? For this season in life, kids aren't doing sports.
Mm-hmm.
We're chilling. We're going to hang out. We're going to be different than everybody else. You want to make change. You want to really see radical change. You want to have the extraordinary marriage you want and we want you to have. Well, then you're going to have to get radical. And you're going to have to stop doing what everybody else is doing and not feel bad about it. I have no problem whatsoever telling anybody that I took a nap on Saturday. None at all. You know why? Because I get rest. I get to come back to reality a little bit after that and just go, you know what? I'm rested. Mm-hmm. I'm not pulling, 120 miles an hour on end. Yeah, we got things that are going on, but I realize that God has asked me to take time to rest. And so maybe in your blended family, there's so much going on. The plates are all up in the air, and you're whirling this thing and that thing and this and that. Maybe it's time just to cut it all out. Be radical, be crazy, be different than everybody else, and be proud of it. That's the thing. Be proud of it. Stand up when somebody goes, hey, what's going on? Nothing. I'm going to go home and I'm going to go take a nap. I'm going to send my kids to go play and I'm going to go take a bubble bath. I'm going to go do nothing. I'm going to go watch a movie with my kids or with my spouse. The kids are going to be gone it's going to be with the ex, and, hubby and I are chilling. Going to bust out some popcorn, and just chill. But that's what it takes, folks. That's what it takes. Gotta be radical. You gotta be just different. And you can do it. I know it's hard because I know I feel it sometimes when people are looking at me like all weird, like, dude, how did you take a nap? And really, and this? And I'm like, yeah, I took a nap and chilled and read a book, and it was wonderful. My kids played Legos, and Lisa did her thing, and it was great. So make it happen. You guys, I mean, we know so many of you love or listen to us, and we love you. We do. We get your emails, and we're here for you. But we'll always tell you, first, second, third marriage, you know what? God first, spouse second, kids, work, life after that. That's what it's all going to come down to. First, second, third, fourth, fifth marriage, you pick it. But that's where it all comes to.
I don't have anything to say after that. You kind of summed it all up.
I summed it all up?
You summed it all up. I was like, I was waiting for you to say love you guys. And
I know. Well, we went a little long, but we do. We love you guys. Get in contact with us. All emails, all voicemails, all messages to us, anonymous. I'm not going to say your names. You can go at ask@oneextraordinarymarriage.com, 858-876-5663, and we'll get you on here. All right? Have a fantastic week. We love you guys.